Welcome back to People and Profit. Before we begin today's episode, I want to remind and encourage you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Not only does it help us deliver the content you enjoy most, but it also helps others to discover this podcast. You can find more information and the link to review in the show notes. Thank you. Now, let's dig into today's topic. Today's topic, what are the mistakes, in Susan's humble opinion, that home buyers, first-time home buyers specifically, make? And I'm going to talk to you. We're going to set the scene here. You don't have a contract to buy a home yet. You don't know what you can financially afford, but you assume, and remember, this is what I think the first mistake is. You assume as a first-time home buyer that you need to do so much more to prepare. A young lady in our office the other day said, "It's my goal in a year or two to own my first home." And we all looked at her, and I think she was surprised because I think she thought we were going to say, yay, right? This is the business that we're in. We close home loans, that we would applaud her. She's 22, 23 years old. And instead of saying, yay, you're amazing, we said, how do you know it's going to take you a year or two? And the advice we gave her was to get with a lender. And we gave her a lender's name and said, just meet with this lender and have him sit down with you and have him look at all the things they look at, which I'm just going to give you a quick inventory of that. Your income, your credit score, your debt, the money that you've saved, right? Have him look at all that and have him tell you what you need to do and when you will be ready to buy your first home. So I really put this under the subject of first-time home buyers. You don't know what you don't know. And you could be more ready than you think you are, number one. You could be maybe doing the wrong things to get ready, number two, like if you have too much debt or if your credit score is too low. Do you know that there are people that can tell you the exact things you need to do to fix those problems quickly, efficiently? So, first-time home buyers, you don't know what you don't know. Get with a lender so that you can see, one, what your financial situation needs to look like, how you get there, are you already there, and in some instances, what money is available for first-time home buyers. It might happen faster than you think. So that's number one. Number two is you need to know that there are monies involved, right? There are closing costs involved, but meeting with the lender is going to help you discover what you need to do and how much you need to save. But some of the closing costs might include a down payment. Well, it's always going to include a down payment, right? When you do find the home, you're going to be required to pay a certain amount of money, $1,000, $3,000, whatever the number is, $5,000 based on the home you're buying. You're going to be required to give that money typically within 3 days of going under a contract. A contract meaning agreeing with a seller that you're going to buy their homes and the term in which you're going to buy their home. So the down payment's money that you have to pay. And then typically, if it's required within your contract, if there's a home inspection, you're required to pay that home inspection fee pretty quickly. And then what happens is you will get all the way through the process to the closing table, 30 days, 45 days, 60 days. It will depend on what's in your contract, how fast your lender can go, right? When the seller's willing to move, when you want to buy. But all those things are determined and put into your contract. And again, whether it's 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, when you get to the closing table, that's when you have to pay your closing costs. Some of the things that are included in your closing costs will be lender charges, right? What is the lender going to charge you in order to give you a loan that you have to pay back over a certain term? What are they going to charge you for that loan? It could be called loan origination fees. The lender, pretty typical when you're a first-time home buyer, they're going to require that you escrow your taxes and insurance. What does that mean? You create an escrow account with them where you deposit money for future items that are required to be paid. What are those future items? Those future items would be hazard or homeowner's insurance, right? In the event your home burns down, you have to have insurance to protect your home. And again, that's for future risk insurance. Just in case something happens to my home in the future, I need to have homeowner's insurance. So you escrow, you deposit funds into the escrow account with the lender at closing for your future homeowner's insurance payment. You escrow funds for your future property taxes that will be due. You will escrow funds if you have to pay any extra insurance. It's called private mortgage insurance in order to obtain your loan. So escrow fees, escrow deposits are part of your closing costs. Where we talked about homeowners insurance, you have to pay 1 year premium in advance. So you buy a year's worth of homeowners insurance today, and then you also deposit a couple of months of homeowners insurance into that escrow account I just spoke about for future payments. Appraisal fee is something that the buyer typically pays. A credit report fee typically gets paid by the buyer. A portion of the title insurance gets paid by the buyer, or sometimes maybe all of the title insurance gets paid by the buyer. So again, it's important to understand, are you ready? You might be ready when you think you're not ready. What do you need to do to get ready if you're not ready? And save your money and don't spend it, because after the initial deposit at closing, you'll be required to pay more money. But the great news is that picking the right professionals, picking the right lender, picking the right real estate professional, picking the right title company, you will be explained what to expect throughout the entire process. And I think it's also important to understand within the contract, there are items. We usually say in our industry, time is of the essence. What does that mean? There are items that have dates that they're required to happen, right? Activities that there are dates and timelines, deadlines in which they must happen. One is the earnest money deposit that I just spoke about, right? Another would be your approval from your lender for financing. So it's really important, buyers, don't make the mistake of dilly-dallying around, procrastinating, not getting the information that the professionals in the context of your contract and your loan, when you do get to the place where you're buying the home, when they ask you for something, get back with them promptly, because there's a chance that whatever they're asking for has a deadline in the contract. And you as a buyer have to demonstrate to the seller that you've done everything you can to get approved for the loan and to get your loan to be able to close to buy their home as fast as possible. The seller expects for you not to delay this purchase. So again, time is of the essence. Don't make the mistake of procrastinating and not getting what people ask you to get them right away. So I think that's important as well. Another thing that is really important, and I think a lot of buyers make a mistake because, again, that same category that I said when I started out, you don't know what you don't know. Title vesting. And I promised the team when I started this video that I wouldn't go on and on about title vesting. So I'm going to give you a really specific a couple of specific examples. Title vesting is how you take title. Here's the good news. When you're married and you take title, you automatically end up vested. What does that mean? Owning the property as husband and wife. And owning a property as husband and wife is an opportunity for the marriage to be in title, which gives certain protection against creditors' judgments or people being able to lien the property. But it also means essentially if one of you passes away, the other one automatically owns the property. So when you're married, you end up with essentially not having to worry about what happens to the property in the event one of you dies or passes away. Let's say two people, whether they're single or married, they're not married to each other, are buying a property together. In that instance, you need to say to the title company, what are my choices for how I take title? What are my choices for how we own this property together, which, by the way, is also called title vesting? Why is it important that title companies educate you? And if they don't ask you, you ask them. Because if you and I buy a property together, right, and we're not married, and one of us passes away, depending on what verbiage the title company writes on the deed where we take title, that makes a difference on if I die or if you die, who owns the property. And the difference is if I die and we own the property together, right? If I die and the agreement is when I die, you end up owning the property, you have to have certain words on the deed after our names. And if those words are missing, when I die, my heirs own the property. In my instance, I have 4 adult children. In my instance, right now, I haven't done estate planning. I haven't done any of that really to the depth that I need to be or need to do, which would mean that you would have to wait for probate to be filed so that the judge could determine who are the heirs and who title gets vested in. So now you don't own property with me. You own property with my heirs, and my heirs need to be determined through probate, which could take about 6 months. So again, we own a property together. We don't get the right verbiage with our intent, which is if I die, you own the property. If you die, I own the property. I die, you now own the property. Again, I'll say it again, with my heirs that have to be determined through the court system by probate. It could take up to 6 months for that to happen. So upon my death, if you want to sell the property, you cannot sell it right away because you have to wait for the judge to determine who my heirs are. And heirs are. What does that mean? That means who now owns the property with you, right? So I'm going to just back up a minute. You and I own a property together, just the two of us. If we want vesting in a certain way, meaning if we want to determine what happens when one of us dies, we have to tell the title company. I don't expect you to remember this, but I do expect you to say to the title company as a buyer, what are my options for going into title with Susan, right? With Joseph, with whomever. There is a title that you can take where, again, it's very specific. If the language is put on there, it's called joint tenants with rights of survivorship. If it's put on the title, Susan West and Joseph Smith, single people, joint tenants with rights of survivorship, that spells it out and says if one of us dies, the other one owns the property, okay? We both own the property 50%, 50%. Without that language, it's tenants in common. Again, I don't need you to remember that. I just need you to remember without that language or with specific tenants in common language, that means that if one of us dies, the other one is in title with the heirs of the person that has deceased. There's a lot of paperwork that goes into that. There's a lot more information that goes into all of these scenarios. There's a lot information if you're buying your homestead, meaning where you're going to live, if you're buying a second home or investment property. But for today, for this episode, what do I concisely want you to remember? That when you're buying a home, the title company is supposed to ask you how you would like to take title. When you're married, even if they miss the question, but you're married, you end up in title as a married couple. One of you passes, the other one takes title automatically. Again, if you're single or you're not married to the person that you're taking title to, there are two other options. Each one of those options have things that happen upon death in order for you to make sure what you want to happen happens. It's important that you get asked the question and you answer it. I trust that I have said that well. I tell people all the time in the classes that I teach, it's not going into title that is difficult. I mean, obviously you have to have the money and you have to get the loan and you have to find the home and you have to find the seller. Beyond all of those really critical things, it's important to understand that you want to know by how you vest or how you take title, what happens if someone dies, what happens if you want to sell, what happens if you want to mortgage. And those are the important questions that get answered when you make these very important decisions before you go into the closing room. So deal with a title company that's going to ask you these questions. And I think it's important to understand today, these are the things as a recap. You don't know what you don't know as a first-time home buyer. That's the biggest thing. You don't know what you can afford and when you can afford it, right? You don't know the costs that are involved, and you don't know how you are supposed to answer questions that you don't even know you're supposed to be asked. So there we have it. I trust that you enjoyed this time. I thank you again so much for listening to People and Profit with me, Susan West. Remember to rate and leave a review. Tell us how you like the show, right? Give us your feedback. It's truly appreciated. It's important to us. It's important to me. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at the reframe_FNT, Facebook at the Reframe, and LinkedIn at the Reframe FNT. I trust that you enjoyed this episode. I trust that you're going to call a lender and find out when and how you can afford a home. And I also trust that you and I will enjoy our next podcast together.